Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Good morning. Welcome to Encounter. I'm your host, Jeff Kellam, the Parish Associate at the Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott. Several years ago, maybe 5, I had a guest on the Encounter program, the Reverend Cynthia Huling Hummel. She had to take early retirement from her church because of early onset Alzheimer's. So we talked about Alzheimer's and living, coping, overcoming, and it was a fascinating conversation, and I wondered how she was doing these days. I'll tell you that I was surprised, first of all, when we recorded the program 5 years ago or so, that she drove from Elmira to Johnson City to the studios. I wasn't sure how that was going to work. I wasn't sure she'd even remember to come, frankly, but everything went fine. So I was wondering how she was doing, and how are you doing?
Hello, I am doing very well. It's wonderful to be on the show again, although I have no remembrance of being on the show the first time. That's one of the things that I struggle with. My difficulty in retaining memories, especially new memories. I seem to have a better memory for things that occurred quite some time ago in my younger life, and
yes.
It's just a little more tricky to pull up the memories. It's sort of like somebody shutting off the computer before that file is saved.
Ah, my. So you remember, do you remember your first day of school and remember how rambunctious a teenager you were and that kind of thing?
I have lots of memories of my earlier life. I don't always make sense of them, but it's harder now. And I used to pretend that I'd remember people, to say, "Oh, hello, good to see you," without having a clue who I was talking to.
Yeah.
I used to do that quite frequently to avoid embarrassing myself and to avoid embarrassing them, especially somebody from my church. It was very tricky because so often people would come up to me in the street or the store and say, "So Pastor Cynthia," and I'm meanwhile having a conversation with myself saying, "I don't know this person, I don't know what I'm supposed to be responding to."
Sure.
Sometimes people would come to my office to plan a wedding or to talk about a personal problem, and I would have to go out and ask my secretary, number one, who the person was,
Yeah.
and number two, what did my secretary, what information could she give me about
Sure.
that? Because I didn't want to have a difficult conversation about somebody's situation without remembering what that situation was.
Yeah, and then so the early Alzheimer's was presenting itself in those ways, but then it got more serious so that you had to take retirement. You could no longer do this full time.
I just couldn't remember what I'd read. I couldn't focus on all the things that a pastor needs to focus on. People sometimes think of pastors, priests, their spiritual leaders just working for an hour on Saturday or Sunday morning, and it's far more complicated.
Sure.
There's different meetings to attend to, different committees, and I just wasn't able to keep all those balls in the air. My church was very, very kind to me, and the Presbyterian Church USA was very kind to me in helping me make that transition, but the reality is it wasn't going to get better, and it was only going to get harder, and it was time for me to step back from something that I really love doing. But it opened up new opportunities too.
And what are those new opportunities?
Oh my goodness, well I've become very involved in different organizations as an advocate, somebody who talks about living with dementia, somebody who explains that it's quite possible to have a life full of meaning and joy in spite of a dementia diagnosis. And so being able to share my experiences, my motto is sort of, when we help others, we help ourselves. And we're on this journey together, and to be able to use my experiences to guide others maybe who've gotten a dementia diagnosis and are feeling a little panicked or sad, to say that there's life. When you walk out of that doctor's office, you can still have a meaningful life, a life of joy.
And a life which still includes service to the church. You're preaching frequently in one of my previous
churches. I've started, believe it or not, reconnecting with them on during COVID, and they called me and said, could you learn how to do Facebook Live, and could you preach? And it's like, well, I knew I could preach. I wasn't sure about the Facebook Live, but we muddled through it, and it's been a great joy. I just reuse my old sermons. You know, I've been a pastor for 26 years now, and so I've got quite a few sermons, and thankfully I'm able to pull them up and look at them and bring them to life again, and to
tweak
share
them for the current times.
And I'm so grateful, because this is a new way for me to be in ministry, to be able to help out the small churches maybe that don't have a pastor, or their pastors take time off, and I'm able to fill in, and it's a great joy.
So practically speaking, with memory issues, and very serious ones, how do you schedule and remember what you're supposed to do on a weekend and where you're supposed to be? Tell me about some of your, what we might call coping mechanisms.
I love that idea of coping mechanisms. I spread everything out into piles. I have a bench that I put things in order, so I know what day of the week that I'm doing this and that. I keep a calendar. I write myself notes and put them on the floor. If I have an important meeting, I ask the person I'm meeting with to give me reminders, to say, can you call me or send me a text message or an email 3 times, the week before, the day before, the morning of, and then I won't forget, or it's less likely that I'll forget. So I have a lot of different strategies for doing that, but it's so helpful now with so many technology, setting my alarm clock or setting the timer on my phone. It's like, oh yeah, I've got to be on my way because I need to do this. But it's, you know, I've asked my church, if I forget something in a service, somebody just needs to raise their hand and say, Pastor Cynthia, did you want to take an offering today? It's like, yes, that's a great idea. Let's do that now. Sometimes I'll skip over things in the bulletin, not on purpose. I just don't attend to detail the way I once did. So I'm asking them to help me so that we're partners in ministry.
And so who would have thought that Post-it notes and telephones would help you keep track? And what a gift this is, especially the cell phone. You said that it may ring several times in a morning with reminders, because you send yourself emails.
I do.
Yep.
And this morning, when we had agreed to meet at a certain time, you were going to pick me up, I had my alarm going every 15 minutes to remind me that you were coming. Because what could have happened is I could have gone to put in a load of laundry. I could have gone down to the basement and lost track of time, lost track of this important engagement that we were going to be together on. And so I try to do what I can to stay, to follow my own plan.
Sure. I want to talk about your music career in just a moment.
Okay.
But you did mention the ways that you, excuse me while I probably move out of camera range here. This is your book, Pathways to Well-Being with Dementia, a manual of help, hope, and inspiration.
Yes, it's a collaborative effort. It's a manual that was created by Dementia Action Alliance, DAAnow.org. And it is a manual that was put together by people living with dementia, by care partners, researchers contributed to it, people who are working in dementia care. So it talks about everyday ways of coping, different ways of looking at situations. It's just a wonderful manual. It's a wonderful resource, and it's free on the website, Dementia Action Alliance website. people can download that manual and get some information, practical information about how do we move forward given a diagnosis, I think.
So give me the website again.
DAA, Dementia Action Alliance, DAAnow.org.
Okay.
.org.
DAAnow.org.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll be putting up the Alzheimer's website on the screen as well. That's a simple one too, www.alz.
Right, alz.org, and that's a great resource for people to go and check out. There's so many interesting articles, so many helpful hints for care partners, for people living with the disease, and for people who are interested in supporting. Because this is a show that is for people of faith, all faiths. We're inviting partnerships with faith communities. Faith community might be willing to host an event or a forum, or to host a support group, or a memory choir. There's so many ways that we can connect with faith communities to provide more support for people with the disease and for care partners.
Every single community of faith is going to be touched by some form of dementia or Alzheimer's itself, or in your case, early onset Alzheimer's, which kind of defines itself, I suppose, that you...
I started having problems with my memory and realizing something was not right when I was 49.
Yeah.
But people can live with Alzheimer's for quite a long time, and carry on with life.
Because here you are, 99 years old.
But to say, I think before people just looked at the diagnosis as kind of a death sentence, and that's it, you can't do this. Right. And there's many things, because the disease affects different parts of our brains in different ways. Some people with other kinds of dementia have other kinds of problems. It might be more with, rather than memory, it might be more with aphasia, speaking, or it might be with hallucinations. So it's really important that your listeners, if you're having problems that concern you, start by visiting your primary care provider, whoever that is, and keeping, kind of a diary of things that might be troubling you that you can discuss, because many things that mimic, diseases or illnesses can mimic a dementia.
Yes.
And so it's important that you eliminate kind of your being an investigator trying to figure out, well, what could be causing these symptoms? What else could it be? And then working with your healthcare provider to eliminate some of the things. Exercise, get enough sleep, eat well, stay active, learn new things. Yeah. What's good for our hearts is good for our brains. Yeah. And so that's really important for everybody.
Ordinarily, you start each day by swimming.
I do. I swim. I moved to Owego in January of last year and discovered, oh my goodness, there's a pool right at the high school, and it's open to the community. Yeah. So I love to swim, and so I love to start my morning, and I usually go 3-4 times a week over to the pool, and it's open from 6 to 8. But people who enjoy a walk, you could walk around your block. You could enroll in a program at the fitness center, whether if you like dancing or but the main thing is moving, finding something that works for you, and maybe something that you can do in a group or with a partner. Yep. It's always more fun if you have somebody to walk with or to bowl with or whatever but to keep moving.
Keep moving. Yep. You mentioned I mentioned earlier your music career, and you keep up with the interest that you've had, that because you've had a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, it doesn't mean the end of everything.
Oh my goodness.
You've been singing for a long time. Tell me about your gig on the weekends.
Yeah, I've been singing a long time. I've been singing most of my life. My mom used to have us singing while we cleaned. We cleaned to Broadway musicals. And so I know all the great, I've sung in choirs, I've sung in small groups. When I was in college, I helped to start a women's group. I sing in a band now. It's rock and roll and country music, and we do a little bit of everything. And during the pandemic, we were able to continue to perform in outside venues. Yeah. And what a joy that is. Music is something that awakens memories, And I encourage people to find their music and enjoy their music. Move to your music. You know, some of us like classical music, some of us like classic rock and roll, classic country, whatever it is, to tap into that music, because again, that activates our brain, and it brings us joy. And so it brings me joy to sing.
Yeah, and it's an anchor. The person who nurtured me at Union Presbyterian Church when I was a child there, I grew up in that church, and Mabel Beach, some of our viewers or listeners might remember that name. Mabel was one who nurtured me, wrote me letters in college, sent me $5 once in a letter in college and said, go have a steak dinner because I know the college food isn't great. When she aged, she was afflicted with dementia, but she could still go to the piano and play old hymns flawlessly and sing them. Her memory of the hymns was precise, musically as well as lyrically. So that was a part of her that survived the memory loss. She wouldn't know where she was in the morning when she got up, but there was that music.
But she could sing "Holy, Holy, Holy."
Yeah.
My mom, who died with Alzheimer's, but she loved music and she loved going to Mass on Sundays, and she loved singing the hymns on Eagle's Wings and the old ones. And I think it's just a wonderful way to build time together too, to share that time together. If you're going to visit somebody in a care facility, or somebody in your congregation maybe isn't able to come to your services now, to bring your services, or to go visit and sing a hymn together, or a prayer that the people often know by heart, the Lord's Prayer or the Hail Mary, to be able to, because again, that has a rhythmic sense to
Sure,
it.
reading the Psalms together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I wanted to look at one of your hobbies too, and I'm going to get up now, Chris, so wide shot or something. I don't know how we're going to do this, but I will hold this up because I know where to put it. This is art that you've done. Did you start doing this previous to your diagnosis? Or?
I did not. I was not an artist at all previous to my diagnosis. But as I got involved with the Alzheimer's Association, they have some wonderful programs that involved art for people living with the diagnosis and care partners.
Yeah.
And we would go and make art. And during the time of COVID, my local library, I was living in Elmira, they had programs on Zoom. And so we could do an art project together. So I learned how to paint with coffee.
With coffee?
With coffee. Who knew?
Brown monochromes.
Philomena Jack taught us how to paint with coffee. And so all we needed was instant coffee and a paintbrush or a Q-tip, and it was just like, this is fun. Other people were painting with wine, but I was painting with coffee. And just the smell of coffee and being able to create pictures. And this is such a beautiful area because we have so many trees and hills. And I think of the Psalms. I look to the hills. Where does my help come from?
Yeah.
My help comes from the Lord.
And the lesson I learned from this is that your diagnosis of Alzheimer's, early onset Alzheimer's, doesn't stop your life.
No.
You moved into new things such as art, new ways of coping or overcoming. What word do you like to use? Coping, overcoming?
I just, new ways
struggling?
of being, new ways of learning, new
yeah.
ways. I focus on the positive. There's some things I can no longer do. I can no longer serve as a fire chaplain. It would be too dangerous for me to try and go to a fire. And it'd be too noisy. I can't take all the stimulation and the noise. I can't do that. So there's certain things that I had to just kind of kiss and bless and thank God for that opportunity. But then there's new things I can do. Like, who would have ever imagined that I'd be an artist?
Yeah.
Who would have imagined some of these things? So I think it's the whole idea is the glass half full or half empty, you know? We can mourn our losses, and we do, and we need to grieve those things that we can no longer do that were meaningful. but we might have other opportunities.
Sure. Our guest today, and I've been so caught up in the conversation, I've not done this halfway through the program, but our guest is the Reverend Cynthia Huling Hummel, diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at the age of 49.
That's when I started having the symptoms. It
Okay.
took me a while to get a diagnosis, frankly, and that's why I urge your listeners, if you're worried about yourself or a loved one, to make sure you discuss your concerns with your primary care provider or your health team to say, what else could this be? It might be something that is could be alleviated by a change in diet or a medication that's causing fuzziness or causing another symptom.
Sure. When you talked earlier in the program about being honest with people about your limitations, talk a little bit more about the things. Well, for example, I'm almost changing track now, which is not helpful to you. When you were first here,
yes,
there was a TV monitor over here with a little bit of sound on it, and you found that really distracting.
Oh,
so
yeah.
talk a little bit about how those of us who know you or know someone with dementia can adjust making life more comfortable for you. You said you have to be honest and say if you don't mind turning that down or turning that off. What are some of the other ways that we can help?
Yeah, that's certainly one thing, because I can't be in a noisy environment like a noisy restaurant. I was in one not too long ago, and honestly, there were 12 TV screens, and I had no idea what anybody was saying. I couldn't attend to the waitress who was trying to take the order, and
Sure.
my friend who was there who was talking across. It was just too noisy. I actually carry earplugs with me right on my keychain, and I put them in, and if things are really bad, I will have a little headset. So if you're working with somebody who's got dementia, if you're interacting, to do your best to kind of limit the distractions, to talk right with them and to them, to keep conversations on target. I'm a person that doesn't understand jokes very well. I don't, I take things literally. I often have to say, what does that mean to people? We all are different. We're like snowflakes. We're all different. I can't read books anymore. I used to love to read books. I can't remember what I've read, and so if I've read a couple of chapters, and I noticed this very early on, it's like I was always having to go back to figure out what I'd read. Yeah, where I was. So it's kind of like chutes and ladders. I was always going back to the beginning. So people say, well, why don't you listen to them on tape? And it's like, I can, but I don't remember. And well, you remembered that. I think sometimes people try and diagnose. You would never diagnose somebody or say to somebody with cancer, well, you look fine to me.
Oh, yes, right.
Well, thank you. I mean, I feel fine today.
Well, and you've been taking courses, right?
Yeah.
At
Elmira College.
Yeah,
I'm in I enrolled in 2011, and I'm on my 42nd class. I'm taking healthcare ethics, and I will not remember the teacher. I will not remember the students. I won't remember the material. I'm not going for another degree. I've got my doctorate, that's fine. I'm going for the interaction. I'm going for the moments that we'll share together.
The temporary stimulation.
Yeah. And I love it. Last night I was at class, and we were talking about ethical situations in the news. And I love, that I can do that. And I'm so grateful to the college for allowing me to audit classes and to stay engaged, to get to meet young people, to talk with young people.
Yeah.
The fact that I'll see that person maybe in the cafeteria and not remember that we sit next to each other in class. I teach them about what it's like to live with Alzheimer's, because some of their parents and grandparents are going to be living with dementia, and it kind of gives them a preview and ways to help them.
You've been in the past an ambassador, moving about and traveling all over the country, I guess, to talk about Alzheimer's.
Yeah, I have. I went to a conference, two conferences this year. One was the Alzheimer's Association International Conference in San Diego, and I actually had the honor, and it was an honor, of presenting on two different occasions in the conference to researchers.
Right.
One was about being a research participant, and the other one was with young researchers and how young researchers might connect with faith communities as a way of building bridges and helping people to learn more about what
Right.
research is needed.
Right. And I'm thinking again about your being in class with students. You may not remember what's being taught or what you've read in the textbook or class to class, but they will remember you.
Yeah. And I speak to different students around the country. I have a relationship with Texas Christian University and their nursing program. And at least once a semester, the nurses will Zoom on and ask questions about what it's like to live with dementia.
Wow.
And I think this is so important because as I age and will be needing more care, that the kids, the young people who are in college and looking ahead to their careers, these are the people who are going to be making the advances in medicine. He'll be caring for me and others. And so it's really important to build those relationships and share what we know.
You bet. So before we close today, I want to go back to the two websites that we suggested. One is www.alz.org.
Yes.
And the other, I'm not going to try to remember.
That's okay. It's
you tell me.
DAA, D like dog, AA now, DAAnow.org
Okay.
for Dementia Action Alliance, people living with dementia and care partners.
Great.
And they have a lot of different things you can participate in, a lot of different programs.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I just see a wonderful light in your eyes and in your life as you continue to serve a church part-time. I mean, it's not a full-time job.
No.
As a retired person, we're allowed to continue to serve churches in those ways. I have yet to hear your band, but I will have to contact you and find out where you're playing next. Our guest today has been the Reverend Cynthia Huling Hummel, who was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, but is living an amazing life as one of my neighbors, in fact, in Owego.
Yeah.
So it was a pleasure to drop down the street, pick you up, and drive you to the studio this time so you didn't have to find your way here. So again, we encourage you to look for the resources not only online, but also to keep your eyes and ears open for opportunities for education, information, and ways that you could serve also in our local community. So become involved and again, as Cynthia says, you stay active. Whether you've been diagnosed with something or you want to stave it off, keep moving. And I'll take that advice by going to the gym later today. Well, maybe I won't, I don't know. Thank you for joining us for the Encounter program this week, produced in cooperation with the Broome County Council of Churches and WNBF Radio and mostly WBNG TV. And we thank them for the production facilities and for helping us put this program on week by week. I'm Jeff Kellam, serving as the Parish Associate at the Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott, hoping that in the coming week you'll be gentle with people and with yourself.